Hi, I'm Dr. Jamil Sayed, and on this podcast, we're going to talk about some deep stuff. I'm here to tell you that you're amazing, and often, the only person who can't see that is you. No matter who you are, what you do, or where you're from, there's greatness in you. Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Jamil Sayed, and welcome to the Transformation Starts Today podcast, where I interview leaders, champions, and high performers from all walks of life as they share their stories, the lessons they've learned along the way, and empowering perspectives to help you create an extraordinary life without regret, starting today. Today we have with us a friend and brother of mine, a mentor and teacher, a life changer for so many, Doron Yitzchak. Doron is an international speaker and breakthrough coach who has created a new coaching methodology based on the 7 hermetic universal laws, Kabbalistic principles, and Jungian psychology that he calls breakthrough matrix coaching. He has also developed a new form of shadow work called shadow breakthrough, where he is able to navigate his clients' unconscious minds and help them tap into suppressed pockets of pain from as far back as childhood, resulting in the most drastic breakthroughs in personal income, chronic health, and intimate relationships, because his clients aren't just breaking through mental blocks, they're breaking through and into a new and higher bandwidth of vibrational frequency. Doron, it is an honor to have you with us, man. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Jamil. It's great to be here.
Yeah, just reading that intro, I was just like, wow, this is going to be good. So for my listeners who don't yet know you, they haven't heard your story, I found that each of us is the hero of our own story. And we've experienced challenges, setbacks, and adversities that we've overcome to get to where we are now. If you would please share with us, what is your hero story?
Funny you should say that, because my surname, which is Gibor, but I live in Israel, and in my passport and my ID document, it's pronounced Gibor, and Gibor actually means hero.
Really?
Enough.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So how am I the hero of my own journey? I suppose if I had to nutshell my life, is that I have always been obsessed with the mind. There's no other way to say it. I remember at the age of 22 being fascinated with the word realize. You know, what would change with a realization? Nothing would change on the outside world, but everything would change on the inside world. And today we can call that a paradigm shift. But I remember just pondering on this word realize as a 22-year-old that wasn't sort of into self-development at the time. I was very much I just done a military tour, and I was breaking free of that whole mindset. And we're talking 20 years ago. And I just got fascinated by this word. And I remember constantly thinking about the mind, and the way that I can express it best is imagine an architect sitting inside a building. And so the architect, who's like their mind works in how a building is constructed, he's sitting inside the building and he's looking and he's thinking to himself, wow, it's amazing how they made this building. And he's looking at ceilings, but knowing that there's beams there, and knowing he's seeing like these columns and knowing that some of them are supportive columns and how they're connected to the foundation, and just these architectural feats, that people put together there nowadays. So I imagine if you were to put an architect inside one of these elaborate buildings, how his mind would keep, be fascinated about the intricacies of the construction. That's really how I see myself, as someone that was like inside a mind yet obsessed with this space. And then in my 20s, I got introduced to a friend that gave me a book called "If You Want to Be Rich and Happy, Don't Go to School," and it was actually Robert Kiyosaki's first book. A lot of people don't know this. They think that Rich Dad Poor Dad was his first book, but actually his first book was called "If You Want to Be Rich and Happy, Don't Go to School." I learned so much from that book, and about the approach to, in the school system, you've got winners, and by winners there's got to be losers, and There's pass and fail, and you're tested on stuff as opposed to stuff that you learn or stuff that happens. Anyway, it was a really fascinating book, and I read his next book, which was Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I got so fascinated by how many basics of wealth creation I was unaware of. And then I started reading more books about money specifically, and I found a commonality with all of these books on money and wealth creation, is that each author had their own sort of way to the promised land, so to speak, but they all spoke about a state of mind. Every single one of them spoke about a state of mind. And that fascinated me. So I thought to myself, well, let me look at what everyone's saying, because everyone speaks about money slightly differently, about, what you're selling and how you sell it. And I mean, there's principles of wealth creation like leverage that don't change, but everyone had their own magic sauce, but they all spoke about a state of mind, which was the same. So I thought to myself, let me check out this mind thing. So I started reading books about the mind, and it was Tony Robbins' book, Unlimited Power, that I still have to this day. The very same one from 20 years ago. The very same one. It doesn't even look like this today. You can't even get one that looks like this today.
The one I have is just a black book.
Yeah. So I bought that book, and I was like, oh my gosh, the way that this guy's talking about the mind, like, that's how I've been thinking. And like, finally there was someone that could articulate what was going on for me in words, which was like fascinated. And you should know that there's this axiom in counseling, coaching, or whatever it is, that if you as a service provider, if you can articulate someone's problem better than they can, they will automatically give you permission to heal them or to guide them, just because you could articulate what's going on for them better.
Yeah.
So I read this book on the mind, and it spoke about NLP, and it just like, yeah, I want more. And so I just started consuming books today that are considered the classics, like Rich Dad Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich, The Magic of Thinking Big, Going from Good to Great, The Richest Man in Babylon, Ogmandino stuff, the stuff that today is considered the classics, and I was just devouring them, literally devouring them, 6-7 books at a time. I stopped watching TV. I thought to myself, if I can watch 7 sitcoms at the same time, like over a week, I can read 7 books. And it's true, because you hear the author's voice slightly different.
Yeah.
And then at some point, I think it was in 2007, I decided, I'm going to see if there's an NLP course in South Africa where I used to live at the time. And sure enough, there was an NLP course happening like 4 or 5 minutes away from where I lived, with an NLP teacher that had taken like a 7-year hiatus that was coming back. And this was like the reopening, and I got a really good deal. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It showed me practical tools. It was very unpredictable. NLP is like, it's not like if you understand this, then you'll understand that. It was very sort of like, if you get this, then it doesn't mean that you understand that, So I found it really, really fascinating. Fast forward, I'm about 28 now, and I get introduced by a friend to an organization called the Mankind Project. And there I learn about emotional literacy, and there I learn about pillars of what they call the new warrior, which is authenticity, accountability, and integrity. And this organization would run a weekend retreat where it was all emotional process work. Now, for people that know emotional process work, they're like, okay, it's like when someone rocks up with like a Rolls Royce, everyone's like, okay, chances are he didn't rent that for tonight. But when people that know about emotional process work, they're like, whoa, okay, you've been exposed to that. For those that don't know about emotional process work is arguably the most powerful cognitive intervention that a person can go through, because real pain gets to come out.
Yeah.
And people, we live in a society where we get told to sort of contain, or to, I don't want to say suppress, but it's definitely hinted to or alluded that, just suppress what you got going on. The culture we have of the antidepressants and pharmaceuticals, it's a culture of suppression. So to be exposed to emotional process work. It was like watching martial artists of the mind. You know, like when you see a martial artist, you can yourself like, that guy's impenetrable. You know, you come at him like this, and oh wow, you know, there's like all these things. You know, like you come at like this, and the guy can do this, and he flips or whatever. You're like, the guy's impenetrable. So I'd watch these like facilitators, these veteran facilitators of emotional process work, doing in like 20 minutes what like psychologists don't do in 10 months. And I'm not exaggerating. For those of you that have never heard of emotional process work, I'm not exaggerating. So I saw this and I was like, damn, I want to get good at that. And it just happened to be that everything revolved around the principles of the NLP. And they were sort of like, they remained loyal to a framework that I have learned. And I was like, oh, wow, I saw how two things could merge, how emotional process work and how NLP, how it could sort of like merge. And I got to sort of like, it was like my first taste of how truth overlaps. Yeah. So you take like 4 healers of different modalities completely, and you put them in a room together. While their modalities of execution may be slightly different, the principles that guide their methodology, the principles that guide the philosophy, they're all principles of truth.
Yes.
And so be able to be able to actually see a healing modality that was hands-on, that was completely cognitive. It was the most powerful thing ever. And I stayed very much involved in this organization for 6 years. And I got exposed to this concept of shadow. And I sort of stayed with that. I moved into coaching later. And over the years, I sort of went from life coaching into performance coaching, and then business coaching, and then executive coaching. It's sort of like it was organic, because that's sort of like what life took me. But I saw all the similarities. And then eventually, out of this whole story, which inside of it was like a really tough time to a place I call the bottom of the barrel. You know, some people get this gift of making their way to the bottom of the barrel, where like it's only up from there. And I had that experience. And then at some point I decided I'm just gonna coach, because that's what I love doing. And over time, when you really have the courage to take the leap and do what you love doing, just because it's going to bring you happiness, and not necessarily because it's going to bring you money, because I couldn't earn money. I had what's called a money block, and that's what I do today. I help people break through blockages. But I had a money block, and so at some point I realized, you know what, I'm probably not going to make the money that I think that I should be earning. But what if I could still live my life as the level of income or the quality of life that I'm living, the lifestyle level that I'm living? But what if I could just do something that I love doing instead of something that I hate doing? And it was that decision at the bottom of the barrel. It's like, well, doing what you hate doing brought you here to the bottom of the barrel. So why not just do what you love?
Powerful question.
So I took that leap, and it just so happens to be that when you do what you love, you grow.
Yeah.
So
Just
to nutshell it, over time, doing what I love doing, and then moving to America and sort of being overflowed with coaches, I had to find out what makes me separate. And I found out that what makes me separate is that I do shadow stuff. I know how to navigate the unconscious mind, and I wasn't aware of what a speciality it was until I sort of, you know, became exposed to the sea or the ocean of coaches that was in California in 2017 when I moved there.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that. And something you just brought up about, you know, why not do something that makes me happy? What comes to mind is oftentimes people have this, at least in my experience, people have this story of once certain requirements are met, maybe it's a certain amount of money that I've got or a certain amount of whatever, then I can go do that thing that I enjoy. And as a possibility for everyone listening, what if you have it backwards? What if by doing that which you enjoy, all the money you could ever want will flow from that? What if you were living your life in such a way that you actually loved what you did, you loved how you did it, you loved who you did it with? What kind of energy would you be putting out and off of you? People would love to be around you. They would love to work with you. You'd be in this amazingly wonderful mental space and emotional space. So the people in your life, whether it be a spouse or kids or family members, they'd love being around you. and life just becomes so much more beautiful, because at the end of the day, we're always chasing a feeling. Somebody thinks they want more money, they don't. Well, what they want is what they think the money will get them. And so, like Doron said, what if I could just choose to do something that I enjoy, that I'm happy with, and maintain my lifestyle first? Just doing that, you would feel richer than the majority of people probably who've got significantly more money, but that's all they have. There's a quote that comes to mind, I forgot who said it, but it's something like, some people are so poor, all they have is money. And it's like, that's the thing that's coming to mind. And so with what you shared, Doron, when you were in that bottom of the barrel kind of headspace, or what somebody might call rock bottom, what was some of the things that you reminded yourself of or told yourself that allowed you to float up to the top? What allowed you to move through that experience powerfully?
It's a good question. And I don't think that I can say that I did anything powerfully.
Mm.
I was in so much pain and hating my life. I was working at a safety deposit box facility, basically like the banks, they've got the safes, the boxes with 2 keys. So this was a private facility, and I couldn't sell the boxes, so they made me. I'm really like nutshelling it, but they made me they called it head of security, but essentially they made me the security guy. And I used to open and close the gate, the remote control, and I had such a fall from grace because all the jobs and positions that I had before were like managerial, and so to find myself opening and closing a gate, it was a type of ego death, because it was I found it very humiliating. I thought to myself, I've got a lot to offer. I used to manage a massive fleet, and I was big in leadership, and I owned a restaurant before, and I started like 2 or 3 businesses, like small scale businesses, and I was like I felt like I was an entrepreneur and a and a manager with good levels of leadership, and there I was opening and closing a gate. So what I knew at that time, I was an intellectual expert, but I couldn't put it into practice. I knew that we create our reality with our thoughts and with our mind. I knew that. I had read all the books about it, and I knew everything sort of like on an intellectual level. And I decided I used to look around and think to myself, how did I create this? How did I manifest this hellhole? And I decided that I was going to utilize the time that I had there to really learn about the laws. I thought to myself, if there are elements that a person can understand, and through the understanding of these elements and frameworks that a person can actually like create a new reality, then I'm going to find out how I created this one, and I'm going to create a new one. And so I became obsessed with laws. I thought to myself, if the only thing that's really true in this world that you can bank on beyond perception are universal laws, that's the truth. Everything else is subject to illusion or perception. You know, Einstein said this entire reality is an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. And that's because if you could see what's going on, we just see atoms everywhere. You know, like when you go into the water, you can see like the whole sea is full of water. If we could really see what is, we wouldn't see air. We'd see the air atoms. We wouldn't see like the table. We'd see the atom. We'd see this whole world, this whole universe full of atoms. But we don't see that. We get to have this user experience. So perception is always flawed because we're never really perceiving what is. And even in our lives, we're only perceiving a perspective. If we get a little bit of information, this happens to everyone. You get a little bit more information about something that happens, and then the perception changes. So I decided I've got to like learn these laws and got to know them really, really well, because I need to get out of here. So I started doing that. I started learning laws, learning the 7 hermetic universal laws. And I devoured everything that I could until there was nothing new for me to learn on the internet. Like there was just nothing new. Everything was just the same things over and over again. And then I found beliefs. And then I came across beliefs. So when the two came together, that was sort of like very powerful. And that sort of was like the beginning of something. But to answer your question specifically, I knew that I had to find peace in my body, because I would wake up in anxiety. I'd spend the whole day in depressive anxiety, and then I'd go to sleep in anxiety, only to know that I'm going to wake up to anxiety the next day. It was really, really a tough time. And I knew that peace is an inside job and not an outside job. So I knew that I had to reach a place where I had peace there in the hellhole. So I started really focusing on this peace thing, and I couldn't get it. And then this meditation came to me. What if I was going to die, like really soon? Like, what if a mugger came up to me, put a gun to my head and said, I'm going to kill you, but I'm going to kill you in 2 minutes, so that you've got enough time to sort of like at least find peace before you leave this world. So as morbid as it sounds, I discovered that time, or the assumption that there will be more time, that I've got more time, this is what allows the ego to get inflated and to act out. Because if you only had 2 more minutes, the person that you're resentful to, you wouldn't be resentful anymore. If you only had 2 minutes to live, all the things that were like, no, by principle, I need to do this, or I need to do that. If there was 2 minutes left, the ego sits down, it becomes deflated, and then the soul just shines through. And then you get to say, okay, well, if I've only got 2 minutes, then like, what's really important to me right now in the last 2 minutes? Yeah. And I was able to come across 3 constructs of the mind that kept me, and it turns out like also humans, from peace. And those 3 constructs are acknowledgements. So stuff that I need to either give thanks for, or give apologies for, or that people need to give me thanks for or apologies for. Okay, and until I get or give those, then like I'm not at peace. Stuff or possessions, until I return what I owe, or until what's returned to me, what is owed to me, I'm still resentful and I'm not going to be at peace. And the last thing is the bucket list, or just a desire to change the present moment. So I need to achieve that before I have peace. I need to achieve that before I have peace. I need to have a degree before I can like look at myself and feel peaceful. I need to have a nice body. I need to have a certain income. There's something that I need to do in order for me to feel good about myself. And these three things, acknowledgements, possessions, and ambitions, if you want to call it that, these 3 things are constructs of the mind that keep a person from peace. So in this meditation, where I've got a gun to my head, God forbid, I've got a gun to my head, and I've got 2 minutes. Once I let go of these 3 things, there was nothing else. There was nothing else, and I actually experienced peace.
Yeah,
I actually experienced peace. And then I'd wake up and then I'd open my eyes, and then my reality would like come alive again. And then I'd have to do it again and again and again and again, until at some point I was able to hold onto that peace outside of the meditation, until I opened my eyes, and then I would have to decide to re-engage with my life that was keeping me away from peace. So that's sort of what happened. And then I found meditation. Yeah. I found meditation after that. And then in meditation, I could hit stillness like this, like really, and would meditate for 60, 90 minutes, no problem. And then things got absolutely unbearable. Things got much, 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 much worse once I found the peace in the meditation. Much worse, like unbearable, to the point that I had to leave. I quit. I had nothing to go to. But what became so clear once I found this peace is that like whatever straws I was grabbing at, I have to stay here because I need to pay my bills. I have to stay here because of whatever reason. It all just like it dissolved. There was nothing there anymore. It's like all I've got here is non-peace. So I'm selling it in a graceful way, but it wasn't graceful, and it wasn't pretty. It wasn't powerful. It was very desperate. It was very desperate, and in hindsight, I'm grateful for it, because I sort of the framework got carved out through my blood, through my pain. So I can now help people do in 3 to 4 months what took me 3, almost 4 years.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Doron, for first of all sharing that beautiful answer. I think it was the perfect answer, because when when I added that word and I said powerfully, I think, and then you said, oh no, it wasn't powerful the way I handled it. And then you described something that I think is very relatable to a lot of people. And what it does is it shows everyone listening that you can create immense change in your life for the positive. And in the moment, it might not be. You went from apathetic and depressed to ecstatic with joy. There was a process that you went through to get there, and it might get worse before it gets better, and that things can change very quickly. You mentioned before you had that job as like head of security. You owned the restaurant, and you thought you were in managerial positions, and you had all this stuff going on, and you sit there and you think, all right, it's only up from here. And then you have an experience where from your perspective, it's a drop down, and you sit there like, what's going on? I know all this stuff. I have all these skills, and yet I'm not creating the life that I want. And you asked a beautiful question that I ask clients all the time, some variation of, how are you creating this? For everyone listening, look at your current situation of life right now in any area. That situation is a result of it's both. It's things that you're doing and not doing, and who you're being and not being. How you're showing up in the world and how you're not showing up in the world, and the things that you're doing and not doing. And when you can look at that, there's a level of responsibility that shows up where you go, oh, wow, I can really only control myself. And those 4 levers right there that I can pull on can shift my entire experience of life. And Doron, that meditation you shared, I think could be really valuable to people. I'm just going to expand on it. So first, there's the 2-minute version that you gave. If everyone listening, if you were in that situation, God forbid the gun's at your head, you got 2 minutes. Who do you call? Assuming, you have the phone with you. Who do you call? Who matters so much to you that in 2 minutes or less, you want to make sure you connect with them and let them know something that's on your heart. Then maybe we expand it out. Let's say you have a year, 1 year left to live, guarantee. What do you do in that year? How would you live your life in such a way that at the end of that year, you can go, I used every moment of this time that was given to me to the fullest. I loved fully, I lived fully, I really had a great experience. And now once you get answers to that, here's the crux of it. If I gave you a 2-minute guarantee, you're going to die, but you got 2 minutes, or I gave you a 1-year guarantee, you're going to die, but you have a year. That's way better than the situation you've got right now. Because right now you don't have a guarantee at all. Right now, something could happen in a minute, something could happen in a day. I don't want it to, but it could. And when we recognize that's a possibility, then the voice comes in, well, am I living my life via procrastination? Am I living my life for tomorrow? Am I living my life saying one day I'll do that thing that I love, that I enjoy, like Doron was talking about? Or do I shift into the question of, what if I could do something that I would love, that I'd be happy doing, and I could maintain my lifestyle? What if I asked that person out and they actually said yes? What if I told the person that I'm in a relationship with how I actually felt about them? Because maybe they don't actually know, because I don't show that affection anymore. The point being, you don't have that guarantee, but you do have the guarantee that you're alive right now, in this moment. That's the greatest gift you possibly have. And we don't know how long you're going to have it for. I remember hearing this story that certain type of Buddhist monks, I'm not sure what sect, but certain type of Buddhist monks, they keep a skull by their bed. So if they wake up the next day, the perspective is, first of all, in a way, it's almost like gratitude and appreciation and thanks that I woke up today. Realize every day 150,000 people don't wake up on average. If you're listening, you weren't one of them. And so when you recognize that, I woke up, then you've got that skull though. And what the skull does is, in a way, it's almost like the memento mori. I think it's a Greek perspective. It's like remember death. You look at the skull and it's a reminder that at least in the physical, that happens to everything, but it's not today. So the fear of death leaves you and you can actually live. Most people I find when they're afraid of dying, they're not actually afraid of dying. What they're afraid of is they haven't actually lived. And when they realize that, everything changes. What if you lived your life, you lived your relationships from the place of, what if I only had 90 days? What if I only had a year? What if I only had an hour? What would I do? Then go do that and watch your life, your relationship, everything flourish. And God willing, you still have decades. But why not live your life that way versus the flip side of it, of you find out you have some chronic disease, you have some acute disease that's going to take you out soon. And there's all these things you didn't do. Like, live your life for today and don't wait. And so Oh, I just went off on a whole little thing, so I'm going to pause. I'm going to send it back to you, Doron. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, the practice of imagining your death is not a morbid one.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually an intricate part of self-development and of successful living. One of the habits of Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is begin with the end in mind. Now you can look at that as I've got a task, and how do I want it to be in the end, and then work my way backwards. But you can also chunk it upwards to, like, my life. What do I want my funeral to look like? What do I want people to say about me? And Jordan Peterson talks about looking at death. Alan Watts talks about looking at death. It's a really important thing, because if you've got only 2 minutes to live and you're angry at someone, and then in this 2 minutes you decide that it's not worth being angry at someone, that's really, really significant. That's really significant. That just a decision of, like, now, because I don't have enough time, I'm going to change how I feel about something. That's really significant. Then what was it when I had time that allowed me to be resentful to someone, which essentially, like, I help people raise their vibration. That's essentially what I do. I help people raise their vibration from their bandwidth, their current bandwidth, because vibration is not just like a free fall, like a buffet. There's an end point, a lower point to your bandwidth, and a higher point to your bandwidth, and you don't go beyond this. And so to move into a higher bandwidth, or to expand the bandwidth, because the expanded bandwidths don't go up like this. I've got like a little visual depiction over here. They don't go up. It feels like that. What's really happening is that they expand. Bandwidths expand like that, so to speak. Again, these are just visual depictions. I help people break through into new bandwidths where there is more money, where there's more creativity, where there's more opportunity. There's just life circumstances. Like someone goes to the dial of life and just goes better. Like you go to the air conditioning unit and you make it colder or hotter. It's like that's how almost immediate it is, and how drastic the changes. And there's different ways that a person can raise their vibration. I use shadow work. An acceptance and awareness of the self, of the part of myself that I'm not willing to look at, that I'm denying. Everyone's got it. Everyone's got it. There's no one that doesn't have it. So if anyone's listening, you go like, yeah, I've heard of that shadow work. I want to tell you now, it's a matter of time before you do shadow work. Okay, it's just a matter of time. If this is the first seed, then great. I'm honored to be the first seed, but it's a matter of time, because you have to look at the part, everyone's got a Mr. Jekyll or a Dr. Jekyll and a Mr. Hyde, a yin, which I want everyone to see, and a yang, a light side, I want everyone to see me, but also a dark side that's there that you're completely unaware of. So every time you do something that you don't want to do, it's because of this part over here. And the more you become aware of it, that's how you turn it off, so to speak. But the point of what I'm trying to get to is that vibration. We live in a world of vibration. Everything is vibration. Everything. And for a human, vibration means feeling. There's 2 parts to vibration. Like I said, there's 2 parts to the ocean. There's the deep, deep, deep part of the ocean that's like unfazed by its surroundings. And that's sort of what we address, or what we change in Shadow Breakthrough. But then there's another part of vibration that everyone has access to. And that's like the waves. And the waves are completely impacted by their environment, by the wind, by the moon, by the tide, whatever. So vibration that you have access to, that you have control over, are the waves. Mm-hmm. So you can actually decide, I'm going to be angry with this person, or I'm going to be compassionate with this person, despite what they did. So if a person did something to me, and for whatever reason I'm resentful towards that person, perfectly justified, that feeling of anger or resentment is a lower vibration, if you're talking vibration wise. And if you want to look at a different equivalent, let's say pH, a low vibration means an unhappy person, or a person in dis-ease or non-peace. but it also means that their pH is going more towards the acidic end as opposed to the alkaline end or the base end. So a balanced pH is 7, and like 7.3 is really good. But like negative emotions, like when a person is really angry or really upset, really depressed or anxious, not only is there an equivalent in vibration that you're in a low vibration, and therefore there are ramifications to that as well, because you attract what you are in life and not what you want. But beyond that, you get to be unhealthy because you're in a negative pH, which basically means acid. There's your body, or the fluids in your body, your blood and everything else becomes more acidic. And what everyone should know is that in order for any disease to just be in the body, it has to have acid, the same way that a farmer needs fertile ground to plant seeds. No acid, no disease. So that piece of like, I can have peace now because I've only got 2 minutes, that is so powerful, because not only am I changing how I feel about someone, not only am I accessing compassion, which is a heart chakra thing, it's a heart thing, which is like the center of the energy systems. You got 3 upper, 3 lower, and the heart, which is like where they all meet together, where the male and the female meet together in love, in unity. The fact that a person can do this exercise just by eliminating time, that's something actual, something primal, something functional, let's call it the ego, that it sort of folds or crumbles or something happens to it when there's no more time, that the person actually, their heart opens. This is so profound.
Yeah.
Their heart actually opens, and they experience, in those 2 minutes, they experience actual healing. And the thing is that if a person could live that life in those 2 minutes, their whole life, they would live a life of dreams.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Steve Jobs said, if your life in the last 3 days, if your last 3 days were not worthy of being your last 3 days, you got to change your life.
Oh yeah. That's something that beautifully said, and something I want to just add for the listeners. Like Doron said, if you had 2 minutes left, and let's say you had that anger, you had that resentment, you had that whatever you don't prefer, and you decided in those 2 minutes, you know what, it's not worth it. You put it down, and then you have that peace. Like you said, it's so profound, because the very fact that you were able to do that means you were able to do that all along. And if you're able to do that all along, then why don't you choose it now? What story do you hold on to? Like,
so let's answer that.
Yeah.
If there wasn't the 2 minutes and the gun to the head and no more time, I'm going to die in 2 minutes, no more time, then in order for a person to reach that same place of compassion, they would need the other person to give them one of the 3 constructs, which is an apology, or to return the money to them. They would need to experience one of these constructs. And so in order for them to have their heart open, without this whole 2 thing, gun to the thing, someone would need to be the bigger person. Someone would need to apologize and appease the other party, which is being the bigger person. And then within the construct of the ego, I got one of my constructs, I got one of my apologies or my possessions. Now I can open my heart. Now I can forgive you. Now I can be more compassionate. Now I can have my healing. Now I can feel better about myself. Now I can go do that shopping or whatever inspired action I'm going to act upon, now that I've got this open heart.
Yeah, it makes sense. It should, to me, the way I receive it is, when we make just to kind of keep it simple, if we make our good feelings conditional, I can feel this, I give myself permission to feel this when something happens. So for example, I can feel peace only after you apologize to me. Then until you do, I don't feel peace. But it's not because I can't. It's because I don't give myself permission to. But usually for most people, they're not conscious of that. They're not thinking like that, but that is what's going on under the hood. You mentioned your shadow work, and I'd love to give you an opportunity to share. If people don't know what that is, you already alluded to it a little bit. What is shadow work, and how is it that people benefit from it?
Okay.
Brace yourself, everyone.
Just organizing my thoughts. Okay, so I'm assuming that anyone listening to your podcast is into self-development. Okay. So I'm about to drop some bombs here. Self-development is actually divided into two phases or two stages. But nobody, not until you reach the second stage, you don't know that there's two stages. So what are these two stages? Let's call them phase one. It's called the light phase. Be the light. Only think of positive things. Visualize. Affirm. Momentum. Set goals. Smart goals. And rah, your way all the way to your dream life. Read this book, read that book. And the biggest, I'm going to call this a lie, but that would mean that people are lying. So that would be too harsh. Let's call it the biggest fallacy. Okay. The biggest fallacy in the light phase of self-development is that people in the light phase of self-development, authors, coaches, speakers, even therapists, they all tell you that the voice inside your mind that's telling you that you're not good enough, or that you're a loser, or that you're not worthy, is lying to you. And that you need to shout louder. That's a fallacy. Because if someone's telling me that there's a voice inside my mind that I need to fight with, that I need to shout louder and disagree with it and say, I am good enough, that's inner conflict.
Yeah.
That is the definition of inner conflict. And to all of you coaches that have been doing this for like years, I'm sorry, you can't argue with that. If the voice is saying, I'm not good enough, and the solution is, I've got to go to the voice and say, I am good enough. Not sustainable. Not sustainable. And we live in a world of the least resistance. So by fighting with the voice and saying, I am good enough, you're like, there's a lot of resistance there, and it can work. It can work for a little bit. You can, if things are going well for you, it can work until it doesn't. Until there's like the little sliver of life, the 10%, 15% that none of the light, the light stuff gets to. It's usually money, relationships, and health, or some variation of that, or some pattern that's going on. But there's that sliver over there that after 6, 7, 8 years in the light phase of self-development, the person looks at this and goes like, well, something's not working. Something's not working. And then it's at that point that a person reaches this realization, and it has to be through a realization or through like some like maybe inception. But there's something else that I'm missing. There's something else going on. There's elements, there's factors that are important to my, experience, to this life equation, and I'm missing them. I don't have access to them. And it's usually at that point that a person goes like, well, maybe I've got a mental block. Maybe I've got a negative belief. And once a person entertains that, which it requires humility, because the light phase is, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this. Just read these books and do these practices, you got this. The dark phase is when a person actually has to come to a realization of like, I don't got this. I thought I did. And it worked for me over there. But over here, in this one area or two areas where like, this means everything to me. I've tried detachment, it doesn't work. I've tried this, it doesn't work. I've tried that. And it's that point that a person has to like make their way to the dark side of self-development. And the dark side of self-development is where we make space for the negative voice. There's a place that it needs to go. And to nutshell it, my shadow breakthrough is a new form of shadow work that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I'm going to speak to my shadow work. If you like, for all those listening, Jordan Peterson talks about the shadow being the part of you that you judge everyone else to be. Like if you judge, basically he talks about pretty grueling stuff. Talks about the Nazis, and that everyone's got a Nazi in them. And until you can get in touch with your own monster, then there's it has the opportunity to come out when you're not being conscious. That's why people will lash out in cars, road rage. That's why people will lash out at waiters or waitresses, or at the cashiers, or people that they I don't know, maybe there's a superiority or inferiority, but essentially when also with loved ones, when there's a dip in awareness and something else takes over, then that's what comes out. What my shadow breakthrough process is really about the voice, the I'm not good enough. That's really what we do. So everything works according to the same laws. There's a law called the Law of Correspondence, which basically talks about how whatever's happening on a physical plane corresponds in process and in principle to the mental plane, which corresponds in principle and in process to the spiritual plane. Okay. It's also called the law of analogy. So just like a battery, which is a source of power, a battery has a negative pole and a positive pole. The human being is also a source of energy, a real source of energy, because what comes out from a person's passion is the source. You're the source, and when it comes out, a person feels it just by being the recipient of either the words, the music, the painting, whatever it is. A person receives that energy and it does something to them. It's a transmutation of energy. So in Shadow Breakthrough, we take the I'm not good enough or the I'm not worthy, whatever the voice is, and we just declare it as the negative pole within this battery. And then we put in place a positive pole, which would be the polarity. Yeah. So if I'm not good enough, somewhere in my life, I'm amazing. And that's how life works, is that you've got polarities. There's a law called the law of polarity, governs positive and negative. And so what happens is the I'm not good enough is actually your inner child. Because when you say I'm not good enough and you allow yourself to feel the smallness and the shame of I'm not good enough, and I say to you, how old do you feel? You're not going to feel your adult self. You're more than likely going to feel the age of a child. So the I'm not good enough is literally the child's doing, and it stays imprinted within the mind forever. And what we do is we put in place its positive polarity. So somewhere in a person's life, a person is like not just not good enough, they are, and not just good enough, they're like epic at something, or like phenomenal at something. It doesn't have to be everywhere, just a specific life area. See, these I ams are polarities in this user experience of life, the same way that when you get into the shower and you've got the faucets, and you've got a hot and you've got a cold. Those are the polarities of your aquatic experience that you call a shower. And so your shower experience is going to be something of like X amount hot and X amount cold. So these core beliefs, these I ams, these are like infinity stones. Like to use the Avengers. So a person that is, let's say, has an I'm not good enough, and the polarity of I'm spectacular, let's call that a performance stone. Yeah. So there were 5 stones, each one governs some aspect of reality. So let's say I'm not good enough and I'm phenomenal. Let's call that the infinity stone that governs performance. And so once a person is aware that the I'm not good enough is not just this fly, this irritating mosquito that's like in my mind that I have to either fight with or try and swat or try and whatever, it's like, it's okay. It's just my negative pole. It's my inner child. There's a part of myself that I don't want to look at. And that's where it goes. It goes to the negative pole. And then over here is the positive pole. I'm awesome. Now, I'm not awesome as a child. Yeah. I'm awesome as an adult. And so what comes together is this relationship, this full circle of the inner child with the wound, the negative force. Because to use the analogy of a bow and an arrow, an archer wants the arrow to go forward. That's what he wants. The whole thing is designed for the arrow to go forward, but the archer only implements a negative force. So he wanted to go forward, but instead he makes it go the other way, the polar direction. And so he creates a negative force over here. And when there's enough of this negative force to propel this arrow to its optimal height, that's when the archer lets go. So the human being is exactly the same. If your soul needed to be a speaker or a coach or a nurturer or a nurse or an artist or whatever, then it would have to have gone through this preparation process where a negative imprint happens. And then there's puberty, and then everything gets muddled around, and that's why you got the rebellious stage in puberty, because everything is becoming the bad and the good is mixing up. And then as long as you don't die, all you got to do is not die. You'll go through your ups, you'll go through your downs, you'll go through your whole life, but you will gravitate towards the polarity of your childhood wounding. The same way that as long as nothing's interrupting the arrow in its flight, it will soar through the clouds. But it's only soaring through the clouds because of the time it's spent on the bow. So if we take that analogy and we put it into a human context, a human application, adults are individuals with strengths, talents, and gifts. And it's with those strengths, talents, and gifts and their passions that they can change the world. And when a person changes the world through their talents and their strengths and their gifts and their passions, that's called self-actualization. But the only reason that a person can do something every day, love it more, and never get tired of it, which is what purpose is, the only way that a human being can do one thing and over and over again, fall in love with it more, never get tired of it, and never get bored, is if somehow that specific activity was hardwired in the brain, in the psyche, not the brain, but the psyche, to not get bored. And that's your purpose. So the hardwiring of the psyche to become an adult, that when you find this one activity that you do, that it lights you up. It fulfills a void that can never be filled, because it's a union. It's when the adult and the child get to hug each other. The adult saying, I'm all this amazing, I'm all of this brilliant, I'm all of this epic, just because you have decided, you concluded about yourself at 5 that you're not good enough. So in Shadow Breakthrough, we bring, first of all, we bring this duality to the core, to the front, that when I'm saying I'm not good enough and I'm angry at myself, when I'm shouting at myself or talking down to myself, I'm not speaking to the adult in the mirror. I'm actually talking down to a child like this, and this child is cowering away. And it's that cowering away that causes the child to retreat into the shadows. Because I don't want to look at how I'm not good enough. I've got memory this from 2 years ago, memory this from 3 years ago, memory this from 3 years ago and 2 days, memory this, like all these memories about how I messed up in life. And according to my self-image, what I could understand from that scenario was that I'm not good enough. Either I wasn't chosen for a team, or I failed a test, or I tried to do something and it never happened. Whatever it is, there's many shadow beliefs that I don't want to speak about by name. So I'm just using the most famous one, which is I'm not good enough. But essentially, you could not have been the adult that you are with the opportunity to change your life and to change everyone's life around you that is interested in your message. That could never have happened without the negative. And what the light phase is doing is saying is like, don't worry about this whole dynamic here. You just be the adult, you speak to yourself nicely, and you go. And that voice that's telling you that you're not good enough, you shout louder. What that means is that instead of speaking nicely to an inner child that's going like this, oh, I'm not good enough, and he like literally feels all the shame that you feel, because the child and the adult is still the same person. There's a duality inside, but there's still a collective singularity that's still one person.
Yeah.
So to use the example that you said before, when you say like, when I have this, then I'll feel good about myself, or when I have this, then I'll make this plan, I'll do this with my life, and I'll start living. Yeah, because everyone's got this. I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z that I want to do, because in 6 months, when my boat arrives, you know, when my ship comes in, that's when I'll start hiking, or that's when I'll start picnicking, or that's when I'll start going on like to take that extracurriculum or explore that hobby. when things are ideal for me. Now, there's an adult way of saying this, or a coaching way of saying this, like, what would your life look like if you just did it, or just go for it, and motivation. But the truth of what's going on here is that if a person is not going to do something because the underlying is, I'm not good enough, and I have to be good enough by achieving that and achieving that and achieving that, and when I achieve that, then I'll prove to myself that I'm phenomenal and not just not good enough. This conditionality of I will live my life, accept myself, love myself, do whatever, only when, and then a condition. What I'm actually saying, this is so profound, guys, if you're still here, this is the bomb. What I'm actually saying is that here's my inner child, I will love you and I will accept you when you no longer stink of I'm not good enough. Yeah? Because I'm not good enough as the child, the adult's wearing it. But if I said to you, sink into I'm not good enough, feel it, allow it to be free in your body. How old do you feel? You're not going to say, I feel my age. It's absolutely impossible. Doesn't exist. Which means we're talking about the inner child. So this relationship of adults and inner child, and this changing of how I speak to the child, it causes the child to come out, and then the void lessens. You know, so inside every person there's a void. If like, I'm sure your listeners know what the void is, because the void is where we try to fill, stuff it with things, either with highs, or with drugs, or with achievement, or with money, or with trophies. There's something that's got to fill the void. But the void actually emanates. It's the actual distance between the I, that's doing the verb, that's doing the loving, that's doing the hating, and the self that's getting hated or getting loved. So as long as I'm not willing to really look at this, I'm not good enough, because everyone told me that it's nothing, it's a lie, and I need to shout louder. In the meantime, I'm neglecting my inner child. And what happens in shadow breakthrough is that once we have a look at this, and there's obviously this whole process, but once I can integrate my I'm not good enough with my I'm spectacular or phenomenal, or whatever the positive polarity is, for everyone it's a different word, there's an inner embrace between my adult self and my inner child. And when there's this inner embrace, the void closes.
Yeah.
No more addictions. So, what is shadow work? Shadow work is shining the light of awareness on the parts of me that I judge to be not good enough, to be ugly, to be whatever it is, where I've already judged myself. I've already condemned myself, and I already resent myself for these shadow beliefs. And so shadow work is about integrating this own part self. Shadow breakthrough specifically is about what to do with the I'm not good enough.
Yeah. I absolutely love your passion, man. Anyone who's watching this on video got to really see it. And anyone who's just listening, you still heard it. And I'm sure you felt it too. Two things that came to mind while you were sharing that. So as you mentioned, as close to in actuality, we are one being. But in a felt experience, it's almost like we can be fragmented. We can have parts. And
almost.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's going on.
Yeah. And internally, healing is becoming whole. Heal is seeing you in totality and not having that internal conflict. It reminds me of a Carl Jung quote. I'm going to paraphrase it, but something to the extent of, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life and you will call it fate. And
direct your life, but otherwise spot on.
Yeah, so there you go. And so from that space, well, this is just the way that I am. Not realizing you haven't made what's unconscious, those beliefs about yourself that you've had for decades that you're not even aware of. And that's causing you to sabotage your relationships now, whether with health, with money, with intimacy, like Doron was saying earlier. And if you made those conscious, you shine the light of awareness on it, you go through that healing process, you become integrated, you become whole. What could happen? And it's like a lot of amazing things.
A lot of amazing things. Like we've seen miracles, like people doubling, tripling, quadrupling, pentupling, which is times 5, octupling, which is times 8, And I don't know what the word is for 10x. Yeah, but I've seen people 10x their income.
Yeah.
I've seen people heal miraculously from like chronic illnesses, even cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I've really just seen miracles. You know, I've got an analogy that I really want to mention now. Really want to mention that sort of really like discusses what not just shadow work, but like unconscious work, because we're coming to a place in this in our humanity where we have to become aware of the concealed elements that govern our experience. You know, in the non-self-development world, like in the tertiary world, if you want to become a doctor, an architect, an engineer, an astronaut, a scientist, a physicist, all of them basically train you in stuff that you can't see. All of them train you in the concealed and not the revealed. You know, I happen to be a Hasidic Jew, and I'm very much into Kabbalah and mysticism. So for me, it makes sense that like to know what goes under the ground. But like, who's going to hire an architect that doesn't know anything about digging foundations? Who's gonna hire an electrician that doesn't know about subterranean, piping? Then like it doesn't make sense. A doctor basically studies the mysticism of the body. So we're moving into a place and time where I think that everybody has to venture to the dark side now. The dark side is where the real light is, because with the lights, we human beings have emotional photosynthesis. Yeah, photosynthesis is like this desire of all plantations to move towards the vegetable kingdom, to move towards the sun, or to move towards light. The human being does exactly the same thing. We move towards pleasure and away from pain. We think about good things and not about bad things. We want to be our self-image and not anything else. And if there is something that, we sort of find a way to like minimize how bad it was, or whatever. But this is the analogy of what unconscious work and shadow breakthrough and just unconscious work, going beyond what you can see. Imagine you had a garden. You got a house, you got a garden, and you love your garden. You got a beautiful lawn, you got beautiful landscaping, flowers, whatever. And one day you walk outside, and instead of seeing your beautiful flowers and your beautiful lawn, you see the whole garden is full of sewage water. And you know it's sewage water because you can smell it. So there's two realities here. The first reality is, if you're completely unaware of what's really going on, you may think that your experience of the problem, meaning the sewage water, is the actual problem. And so then the solution to that would be to put on your Wellington boots, to get a big bucket, and to start bucketing this water out of your garden, and throwing it over the fence or whatever. Not your neighbors, but you know what I mean? Just like bucketing and throwing the sewage water out. That's if you're unaware of what's really going on. You've just got your perception, what's revealed. But if you had an understanding of, let's call them the laws, or like the town planning infrastructure, and according to that, you know that there's a subterranean municipal pipe, a big one that's got sewage in it, and that there's probably a crack in that, and all the water's come up. Now your approach to the problem is completely different. You're not going to put on Wellingtons. You're going to call a plumber that knows how to dig. And then you find the right person. He digs underground, meaning he makes the concealed revealed, like a shadow worker or a shadow guide. And then they find the real problem, not just the experience, the real problem, the cause, the source of the experience. Okay, I'm just using problem. I mean, there's no problems in humanity. There's just experiences. But then once you identify the actual source of the experience that you don't want, the experience clears itself up. Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing with shadow work and with shadow breakthrough, is that whatever's going on in your life, if you've got a money problem, I don't help you deal with money. I happen to be a business coach, so I know money well, but I don't teach people about money. I teach people about self-acceptance, and yet their income can explode.
Yeah.
So that's what it's about. There's the experience of the problem. Let's call it the pattern or the blockage. And then the solution to that problem lies within self-acceptance of your own inner child. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought, indeed? And so I would love to, if you could share with us, I know you have a powerful video on YouTube that I recommend everyone check out about the difference between a victim mentality and a creator mentality. Could you give us like a general overview of what that means for people who aren't sure?
Sure. So that video is called Victim Mentality, the Greatest Illusion Known to Mankind. It's 27-minute video on YouTube. It's also available on my website, breakthroughmatrix.com. So in a nutshell, because it's a very detailed and very information-packed video that if you're going to watch, you might want to watch it more than once. First time, don't take any notes, and from the second and third time, you can take notes. In a nutshell, victim mentality, I call it the greatest illusion known to mankind because it's all based on perception and we all have it. So just like in the Matrix, where there was a red pill and a blue pill, yeah? Victim mentality is the blue pill. Victim mentality is when you get to not have your peace because of a justified reason. So something happened, I felt detriment afterwards, and if I can trace it to someone, then that someone is responsible for my detriment. I blame that person because everything was fine beforehand. It just makes sense. Okay. And to take this to the furthest and most extreme example, if let's say, God forbid, someone was hit by a car and they had to have one of their limbs amputated, and then they'd be pretty resentful towards the driver, right? But let's say the driver went to jail, and in jail the driver got beaten up and then killed. So you could say that like justice was served on many levels for the amputee. But if the amputee is still angry with a dead person, then it can't be. It can't be that their perception and that all of their thinking that's right lands them in a place of resentment towards a person that's now dead. Let's just say, according with this example. So now, if a person understands everything and perceives everything right or correctly, they should have peace. They should have peace. Just like in the 2 minutes, yeah, the 2 minutes with the gun, you have at the end of it, you got peace. So I go into an analogy of, I explain what a paradigm is, which I'm not going to explain now, but I go into this analogy of victim mentality is basically when I perceive that in the greater cause and effect of life, so cause and effect, that life is on the cause side, throwing stuff at humans, sometimes strawberries, which no one minds, and sometimes lemons. And then there's a whole philosophy about what to do when life throws you lemons. And then so there's life on the cause side and human beings on the effect side. Okay. And this is what it feels like sometimes, that life is throwing stuff. So it feels like life on the cause side, human beings on the effect side. That misunderstanding is victim mentality. When you think that life happens to humans for better or for worse, that means that I am a victim of life. And that's victim mentality. And I explain in this video that it doesn't just mean someone that whines and complains, because that's what a lot of people think victim mentality is. That victim mentality actually is this paradigm of life is happening to human beings. In the video, I give this analogy about a whole group of people that are on a camping site. And then there's like 3 or 4 snipers that are hidden in the mountains and they're shooting at them. And now they're really under fire by life. So out of this calamity, there will be 2 types of people that emerge from this paradigm of we're under fire by life. Life happens to humans. From this paradigm, 2 types of people emerge: a positive, which is the rescuer. Come on, guys, we can do it. Everything's going to be okay. And the victim. Oh my gosh, we're doomed. So the one is positive, expansive. Come on, everything's going to be okay. And the other one is magnetic, negative, and like completely paralyzed. Can't move, we're going to die. And how these 2 interact is basically the whole story of victim mentality. And it's called an illusion because it all just makes sense. So if that's the illusion and that's the victim mentality, then what's the opposite? It's not victor mentality, like a lot of people think, because a victor is just a rescuer. Still believes that life is happening to us, just a great attitude. The opposite of victim mentality is creator mentality. And in creator mentality, a person realizes that life is not on the cause side and humans on the effect side. In fact, it's the other way around. I've got my vibration, and my vibration emits a signal, and the whole universe responds to my vibration. The whole universe is a mere response mechanism that manifests my vibration through people. So creative mentality is human vibration or humans, life experience. So it's actually the opposite. And that's the true, once you truly understand that, you go, okay, hold on a second, everything in my life, everything, from the thing that I love the most to the thing that I hate the most, this whole composite, this whole stew that's called my life, it's a response to my vibration. And once you can truly understand that, number one, you can't really blame anyone for anything. You can hold people responsible. I'm not saying that you should just be a doormat. You can hold people responsible, and you can definitely decide who you want to spend time with and who you don't want to spend time with, who you want to give your energy to and who you don't. But I'm saying blaming my detriment is because of you. That's victim mentality. And a victim will always attract a rescuer. And if you go and watch the video, your mind will be blown at the narratives of the rescuer, and when the rescuer slips into what's called a tyrant, and the victim, and when the victim slips into the tyrant, their rants and the narratives, it's uncanny, it's mind-blowing. But essentially it's a very eye-opening video, and that's the basis of any transformation. The basis of any breakthrough is just waking up from victim mentality and accepting where you are, and that your whole life is because of you, and therefore your whole breakthrough, your whole change, your whole transformation can be and will be because of you.
So first of all, I highly, highly, highly recommend everyone go to Doron's website, look him up on YouTube. He's got a bunch of videos that I think I've watched probably 10 times each that I've very much enjoyed. And I trust every one of you will get the same type of benefit, if not more. Something you just said reminds me of this old expression: you are the greatest problem you'll ever have. And that's also, it's good news too, because you're also the greatest solution. And when you can realize that, Doron said it earlier, and I alluded to it as well. How am I creating whatever my current situation is? And again, some people, if they're in their ego, too attached to it, they get defensive. What do you mean? How am I? It's not my fault. They're taking it as blame, shame, guilt. It's not that. It's the responsibility. When we break the word up, it's the ability to respond. If my life isn't the way I'd like it to be, I can do something about that via those 4 levers I talked about earlier: the actions that I take and don't take, and who I'm being and not being. Another way of saying who I'm being is kind of like the vibration that Doron's talking about. But from that level of doing, notice what are the actions I take and don't take that perpetuate the circumstances that I don't want. And when we can really sit in that, there's a level of ownership, of creator or responsibility that we can take that shifts everything. But just like before, if I can't feel peace until that person says I'm sorry, then I don't feel peace. In that same kind of way, if I can't be successful or life can't be the way I want it to be until all these external things happen, I might be waiting around forever. But if I take that back and say, no, I get to determine what my life looks like, and using those 4 levers really shift my whole immediate experience of life, it's incredible how quickly life can change. And sometimes we get too ahead of ourselves, 50 steps down the road. Just focus on this moment and focus on what is the next step I can take towards what excites me, towards what I would love. And if you just did that, one step ahead of the next, it reminds me of that Martin Luther King Jr. quote where he said, just take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase. And when we think we have to see the whole staircase, we hold ourselves back. And so, Doron, this podcast is called Transformation Starts Today. And the foundation of my work is helping people create an extraordinary life without regret. Can you please share with us, how would you advise anyone listening to do that?
Can you be more specific with your question?
If somebody wanted to
transform.
Somebody wanted to create an extraordinary life without regret, and you only had, a couple sentences to let them to share something, what would that be?
Ah, beautiful. It was Buckminster Fuller that said, we cannot create a new reality by fighting our current one. You must create a new model of reality that renders your previous one as obsolete.
Yeah.
So what that means is there's a time for trying harder, and there's a time for healing. When you think you've got it and all you need is a coach to keep you accountable and sort of like take you on a linear journey, then you'll get what you need. But at some point, the linear journey doesn't cut it, and you need someone that can give you a paradox, or that can introduce you or help you recognize a paradox. And it's with that paradox that you change your thinking. You change your thinking. So if I had to say, how can a person start a journey of meaningful transformation? First and foremost, work on trusting that the laws work together in this entity that some may call God, other may call the universe, other may call source, and that there is a connection to this entity. There is a connection to this, and the only real way out of victim mentality is to know that the universe has your back. The universe has your back, because the faith turns into belief the same way that a seed turns into a tree. So it's really important to have faith that the universe has your back, and that whatever you're going through, if you're going through a tough time, it's not for nothing. It's the arrow waiting for a point of release, and that'll come. And most importantly is, don't decide how you're going to pay your bills. Don't decide how you're going to, don't worry about how you're going to support your lifestyle. Decide the type of life that you want. Decide the type of clients that you want. Decide what type of life would I be living in order for me to wake up and feel really excited about life. Design your life. Don't design your income.
I love when you shared that Buckminster Fuller quote, and just kind of paraphrasing the end of it, rather than resist and fight what currently is, create something new. And one way that I often share with clients that I'd love to share with everyone listening, whatever it is that you want, think about, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years, whatever that big goal might look like in various areas of your life, financially, etc. The current version of you can't create that. And the reason is because if it could, it would have already. The current version of you can create the life that you have right now, which means that if you don't like what you have right now, that version of you needs to die. And when you let that version of you go by stepping into who would I need to be? A simple example, when I'm working with clients, I help them recreate their identity and how they show up in the world. And we do that kind of excavation, that deep work that Doron's talking about. And coming from this place of, let's say somebody wanted to identify, let's say they're a father. I am the world's greatest father. That's a way of being. And if we were to step into that, well, how would the world's greatest father act right now? Well, he might do these 10 things. And you look at their life as it currently is, and you're not doing any of those things right now. And so you could say, I am the world's greatest father in this place, but it's a lie. So you're sitting there going, that doesn't feel right. I'm kind of like pushing the light side of it, like you were saying. But if you do that deep work first, and you release the guilt and the shame and the blame and all that, the limiting beliefs, and now you're left with this, well, I could moment by moment choose to be that by identifying with it, acting in accordance with it, being in perfect alignment with that. And then fast forward a day, a week, a month, a year, a decade, your relationship with your kids is so different than it's been beforehand, because rather than resist as it is currently, you just kind of abandon as it is currently, and you get clear, what do I want? Start being that now and stop waiting. And so something that's coming up, which I love that you brought this up earlier, because I wanted to ask you this, and it works so well. That idea of the gun to your head, you've got 2 minutes. If you were in your final moments, and this was the last opportunity that you had to share or share anything or help anyone right now, the people who are listening, what would you want to make sure they knew before you left this earth?
Are you asking me as a person?
Yes. Yeah.
Is there anyone, or what would I say?
Is there anything that you would say to people where you knew, given everything I've ever learned in my life, given my life experience, there's people who are hearing me right now, and this is the last time they're ever going to hear from me, what would I want them to be left with?
everything, bar nothing, is a function or derivative of how much you accept or don't accept yourself as you are right now.
Hmm. I'm smiling as I hear that because I have tears in my eyes right now, actually. I really love that answer. And I hope that some people heard that and it just hit them right in the heart. And some people heard that, it might have went over your head. And you're like, why does this guy have tears in his eyes? Re-listen to what Doron just said and really be with that. That's a beautiful, beautiful answer. Yeah. I deeply hope everyone dives into that, explore it. You could journal about that for hours. Just explore that. I'm going to do that. I'm excited. So thank you, man, for sharing that. And so this has been such a wonderful conversation. And there was a lot more that I wanted to ask you about. And I know we're coming up to the top of the hour. I do want to, again, make that strong encouragement and invitation to everyone to check out those videos on YouTube and Doron's website. And he'll bring those up again in a moment. But he mentioned the universal laws a couple times. And it's very powerful to know what those are, how they work, living in alignment with them. He shares so much from his heart that you could find on YouTube, on his website about those. And I really recommend you go and dive into those. And so, Doron, what are you excited about now that you're working on?
So I've got a YouTube ad that's in the process that I had no idea how much goes into these YouTube ads. But essentially, I'm very proud of my learning website that I've got up for a few months now. It's a breakthroughmatrix.com. It's a learning website, so there's a lot of free stuff there. All of my slides and coaching diagrams, they're available there for a free download. There's a lot of free stuff there. I've only charged for stuff that there's a specific level of facilitation or a specific level of value, but essentially I really want people to know the stuff for free. So you can engage with my content in packages on breakthroughmatrix.com. And my YouTube channel is it's Doron Gibor, Geber. It'll show up as Doron Yitzchak. I'm going through an embrace of my ethnicity and my Jewish heritage, and embracing the name that I was given when I was born, which is Doron Yitzchak. Yitzchak is the Hebrew for Isaac. And then so those sites are already and beaming with content. So hope everyone enjoys. The YouTube has got a lot of content, but it's cut up, and on the breakthroughmatrix.com it is packaged nicely. So go wild.
Beautiful. Yeah, I strongly recommend, if anyone's listening and you've gotten this desire, this urge of, I want to talk to this guy again, I want to work with this guy, I want to find out more about what he's got going on, look at all the links. I'll have them in the show notes as well. And it's a beautiful rabbit hole to go down, and it just might change your life. And again, if this conversation has been valuable to you, first and foremost, listen to it again. Kind of like Doron said before about his videos. You listen to it now, listen to it again, take notes, dive into it. What can you take from this to begin improving your life immediately? You don't have to wait. In addition, if this landed for you, please share this with somebody who could benefit from it. Share Doron with somebody who could benefit from him. Maybe it's not you, maybe it's someone that you know. And leave a review, whether it's on Apple or Spotify or it's a YouTube comment, wherever you're listening. It would really mean a lot. Doron, is there anything you'd like to say before we close? No,
I've really had an awesome time. Thank you very much for having me. I think you're doing great work, and it's been an honor and a privilege to be here with you.
Thank you. The feeling is mutual. Thank you, man. And as I said at the start, my life's work is to help leaders, champions, and high performers to create an extraordinary life without regret. If you're going through something in your life right now and I could be of support, I'd love to have a conversation with you. You can schedule that on my website, which is just jumailsayed.com. If you're looking to follow the podcast and you're looking at other episodes, obviously they're all on all the different podcast platforms, but you can also check out social media. Instagram is at Dr. Jumail Sayed, which is DR and then my name, and Facebook and LinkedIn are just Jumail Sayed. There's probably almost 900 pieces of content that have been out there over the last 6-7 years. And I've been blessed to hear people tell me about how impactful it was for them. It's all free. Check it out. I trust it'll really serve you. Again, this podcast is called Transformation Starts Today for a reason. I have found that most people's favorite day to change their life is tomorrow. And that's why they stay stuck. But you can be different. You can listen to our conversation. You can apply immediately. You can reach out for the help that you need, whether it's from Doron, from myself, from somebody else, and take action. And I always like to think of it as, what would my future self thank me for? Go do that, and your life can transform today. Take care. Thank you for being with us today. If this conversation served you, it would mean a lot if you left a review and shared this with anyone who may benefit. An extraordinary life without regret is available to you now. Choose it. It's your time.